today, but with a fascinating twist.
Oh, this should be good.
It is. Our guide is John Chavez, and his book, 171819, Redshirting Education, is not your typical parenting book.
I've heard of it, yeah.
He comes at this not just as an educator, but get this, as a football coach.
Interesting. So we're talking about someone who's spent over 20 years in the classroom, but also nearly 3 decades coaching football and baseball.
You got it. And he's currently a TV commentator for high school football, so he's got a unique perspective on this.
Definitely seeing these kids both on and off the field.
And here's the kicker. He actually redshirted all 3 of his sons.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something I think we can all relate to. Reading comprehension.
It's definitely something that's so important no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely. I mean, whether you're prepping for like a big work presentation, or you're trying to catch up on some research, or, you're even just trying to enjoy a good book, you got to be able to actually understand what you're reading.
That's so true.
And that's what's so cool about the guide we're looking at today. It's packed with all these practical tips and strategies to help us really boost those comprehension skills.
Yeah, it's not just about, kind of like skimming the surface.
Right.
We're going to go deeper and figure out how to really extract meaning, make connections, and truly engage with the text. Like, those are the goals today.
I love that. And the guide starts off by really emphasizing that reading comprehension, it's more complex than we might realize. It's not just like, okay, I know what all these words mean individually.
Right.
It's about putting those pieces together like a puzzle.
Exactly. And there's even research that shows strong reading comprehension skills are like super important for academic success.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it. Those early foundations in reading comprehension, they're the building blocks for understanding all those more difficult subjects later on.
Totally. I mean, you can't really grasp history or science or even math if you can't understand what you're reading in the first place.
Exactly.
It's like you're trying to build a house on a shaky foundation.
Exactly. It's going to fall apart. But the good news is reading comprehension is a skill you can develop and improve no matter your age.
That is good news. And I was actually really surprised by one of the techniques the guide emphasizes. You ready for this?
Okay, I'm ready.
Reading aloud. I know, right? You might think that's just a thing for kids, but there's more and more evidence that shows that reading aloud, even as adults, can have some pretty amazing benefits.
Like what?
Well, for one, the guide mentions that it can actually help us focus better.
Really?
Yeah. It can also help us absorb new vocabulary and even reduce stress.
Wow. I never would have thought about that. Why do you think that is?
Well, it seems like it's because by engaging more of our senses, by actually vocalizing the words, it helps us solidify the information in our brains.
Ah, that makes sense. And I can see how for kids, hearing someone read aloud can be really beneficial too.
For sure. It exposes them to proper pronunciation and intonation so they can start to internalize those patterns.
Yeah, it's like setting a good example for them to follow.
Right. It's funny mentioning that because it reminds me of how my dad used to read to me every night when I was little.
Oh.
I was completely captivated by those stories. It wasn't just about the words themselves. It was the whole experience, the sound of his voice, the time we spent together. It made those books so special.
That's so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
It really shows how powerful those shared reading experiences can be.
For sure. And that actually brings us to another key point from the guide. Choosing age-appropriate and engaging books is super important.
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be something you're actually interested in.
Exactly. For kids, that might mean graphic novels, adventure series, anything that really captures their attention.
Right.
And for adults, it could be diving into a biography of someone you admire, or exploring a new hobby, or even revisiting a favorite book from your childhood.
Ooh. I love that idea. Going back to the classics.
Right. There's a reason those books have stood the test of time.
Totally. But even with the most fascinating book in the world, we can still sometimes fall into that trap of passive reading.
Yeah.
Just skimming the surface.
Oh, I know what you mean. Your eyes are moving across the words, but your brain's not really absorbing anything.
Exactly. And that's where those active reading techniques from the guide come in. These strategies really help you dig deeper into the meaning of the text.
Okay, so let's break down those active reading techniques because I'm really curious to hear more about them. What's the first one?
Well, one of the most effective ones is predicting. Before you turn the page, try to anticipate what's going to happen next.
Ooh, I love that. It's like turning reading into a game.
Exactly. And even if your prediction's wrong, the act of making that prediction forces you to think critically about the the plot, the characters, the author's intentions.
Right. It makes you like an active participant in the story instead of just a passive observer.
Exactly. And another powerful technique is making connections. Like as you're reading, try to relate the text to your own experiences, other books you've read, or even current events.
I see. So it's about taking those abstract ideas and grounding them in something that's more relatable to you.
Precisely. And those connections help solidify your understanding and make the information more memorable.
Okay, I like that. What's another technique?
Another really helpful one is visualizing. Like close your eyes and try to picture what the author is describing.
It's like creating your own little movie in your head.
Exactly. And research has shown that visualizing actually activates multiple areas of the brain, which strengthens memory and comprehension.
Wow, that's fascinating. I'm definitely going to try that.
It's especially helpful for kids, because it helps develop their imaginations and bring the story to life.
Okay, so we've got predicting, making connections, visualizing. What's the last technique?
The last one is summarizing. And this is a great way to make sure you've really understood what you've read.
How so?
Well, could you explain the main points of the text to someone else in your own words? Could you teach what you learned?
Ah, I see. If you can do that, then you know you've really grasped the material.
Exactly. It's the ultimate test of comprehension.
Love it. I feel like these active reading techniques are like game changers.
They totally are.
But the guide also reminds us that building a strong vocabulary is like really essential for reading comprehension. It's like having a bigger toolbox filled with words you can use to understand and express yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so important.
But it doesn't have to be boring.
No, not at all. The guide suggests incorporating fun activities like word games, crosswords, and even labeling everyday objects.
Labeling everyday objects. That's interesting.
Yeah, like if you have a young child, you can go around the house and label everything you see.
Ah, I see. So it's like turning your home into a giant vocabulary lesson.
Exactly. And it makes learning new words more engaging and memorable.
That's a great idea. And speaking of making reading more engaging, the guide also emphasizes the importance of creating a reading-rich environment.
Oh, absolutely. It's about making reading feel like a treat, not a chore.
So like a cozy corner with a comfy chair, good lighting, and of course a stack of inviting books.
Exactly. And for children, it's so important to lead by example.
Reading.
Well, if they see the adults in their lives reading regularly, they'll be more likely to embrace reading themselves.
It's like that saying, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. But, in today's world, we can't really ignore the role of technology either.
True. I mean, we've got ebooks, audiobooks, educational apps. They're everywhere.
Right. And they can be really valuable tools. Like ebooks and audiobooks can make reading more accessible for people who might struggle with traditional print. And educational apps can make learning more fun and engaging.
Yeah, I love how there are so many options these days. But I did notice that the guide also cautions against relying solely on screens.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like technology has its place, but there's nothing quite like that tactile experience of holding a physical book, turning the pages, getting lost in the story.
I agree. There's something special about that physical connection to a book. So what's your take? Do you prefer digital or print?
That's a tough one. I think it really depends on the mood and the material. Like sometimes I love the convenience of ebooks, especially when I'm traveling.
Right.
But there's nothing quite like curling up with a good old-fashioned paperback.
I hear you. It's like the difference between watching a movie on your phone and seeing it on the big screen. Both have their perks.
Exactly. And, another point the guide brings up that I found really interesting is this idea of weaving reading into our everyday routines.
Oh, yeah, like making it feel like a natural part of our lives rather than like this separate scheduled activity.
Yeah, precisely. And it's easier than you might think. Like, think about cooking together. Reading recipes aloud and following the instructions as a team can be a fun way to build sequencing skills and understanding of directions.
That's true. And it's way more engaging than just staring at a screen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or think about all the signs and labels we encounter every day. Street signs, menus, food labels.
Oh, I see. Those are all opportunities to practice reading comprehension in the real world.
Exactly. It's about making those connections between words and their meaning in everyday life.
I love that. It's like a constant low-key reading comprehension workout.
Exactly. And last but not least, the guide reminds us that learning to read and to read well, it takes time and practice.
So true. It's a journey, not a destination.
Right. We need to be patient with ourselves and with the young readers in our lives. Not everyone learns at the same pace.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Oh, for sure. Did they finish a chapter? Tried a new genre? Those are all achievements worth acknowledging.
It's all about positive reinforcement. It builds confidence and fosters that love of reading.
Exactly. In fact, I have a personal anecdote that really highlights the power of patience and perseverance when it comes to reading. When I was younger, I actually really struggled with reading. I was a slow reader, and I would often feel lost and discouraged.
Oh, wow. I would have never guessed.
Yeah, it was tough. But, with time and patience and a lot of encouragement from my parents and teachers, I was able to overcome that challenge.
That's so inspiring. It's a good reminder that even those who seem like natural readers often have their own unique journeys and struggles.
Absolutely. And, building on this idea of support and guidance, the GDEG actually highlights the importance of focusing on phonics and phonemic awareness, especially in early childhood education.
What's about building that strong foundation right from the start?
Exactly. Phonics is all about understanding the relationship between letters and sounds, like how those letters work together to form words.
Right.
And then phonemic awareness takes it a step further. It's the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate those individual sounds within words.
Okay, so it's like breaking down those building blocks of language.
Precisely.
It makes me think about all those rhyming games and songs we used to sing as kids. They weren't just fun activities, they were actually helping us develop those crucial phonemic awareness skills.
Exactly. By playing with sounds and rhymes, children start to recognize patterns in words, which is essential for decoding and reading fluency.
That's so cool how it all connects. And the guide also mentions the importance of exposing young readers to a variety of genres and formats.
Oh, absolutely. It's about nurturing a lifelong love of reading by introducing them to a wide range of texts, from fiction to nonfiction poetry, graphic novels, magazines, you name it.
I love that. It's like opening up a whole world of possibilities.
Exactly. And it helps them discover what truly resonates with them.
It reminds me of when I was a kid. I was obsessed with Greek mythology. I devoured every book I could find on the subject.
Right. That's awesome.
But then I stumbled upon historical fiction, and it opened up a whole new world of storytelling and learning for me.
That's a perfect example of how exploring different genres can spark new interests and passions. And, don't underestimate the power of those visual formats like graphic novels or magazines. They can be incredibly engaging, especially for reluctant readers or those who are drawn to visual storytelling.
So true. It's all about finding those entry points that make reading feel exciting and accessible.
Exactly. And sometimes if we notice a child struggling with reading, it's important to remember that there's no shame in seeking help.
Right.
Early intervention is key. Teachers and reading specialists can provide valuable support and guidance tailored to a child's individual needs.
It's a team effort, really. Parents, teachers, and the child all working together to overcome those challenges and nurture that love of reading.
Exactly. And speaking of challenges, it's important to acknowledge that reading comprehension isn't always a walk in the park, even for experienced readers.
Oh, I know that feeling.
There will be times when we encounter complex texts, unfamiliar vocabulary, or challenging concepts that require extra effort to fully grasp.
It's like hitting a wall sometimes.
Exactly. But just like with any challenge, it's about perseverance and finding those strategies that work for you.
Right. You've got to keep pushing forward.
And the guide emphasizes that strong reading comprehension is about so much more than just understanding individual words or sentences. It's about being able to analyze the text as a whole, identify the author's purpose, draw inferences, and evaluate the information presented.
Those are some pretty high-level skills.
They are. And they're essential for navigating the increasingly complex world of information we live in. Think about it. We're constantly bombarded with news articles, social media posts, research papers, marketing materials, all vying for our attention.
It's information overload.
It is. And strong reading comprehension skills allow us to sift through all of that discerned fact from fiction and form our own informed opinions.
Wow. It's like having a superpower.
It kind of is. And it's not just about consuming information passively. It's about being able to engage with it critically, to question assumptions, to analyze different perspectives.
It's about being an active participant in the conversation, not just a passive observer.
Exactly. And those critical thinking skills are transferable to all areas of life, from academic pursuits to professional success to personal growth.
Wow, they really are foundational skills.
They are. They're essential for problem-solving decision-making, navigating the complexities of the world around us.
Oh, true.
And while the guide focuses primarily on reading comprehension, I think it's also important to acknowledge how closely these skills are intertwined with effective writing.
Oh, that makes sense. They go hand in hand, don't they?
Exactly. If you can understand how authors construct meaning through their writing, you're better equipped to express your own ideas clearly and effectively in written form.
Right. It's like learning to appreciate a beautiful painting and then being inspired to create your own masterpiece.
I love that analogy. It's a reminder that reading and writing aren't isolated skills. They complement and reinforce each other.
Absolutely. And just as with reading, there are strategies and techniques that can help us become more effective writers.
For sure.
Maybe that's a topic for another deep dive.
I'd love to explore that with you sometime.
Okay, let's put a pin in that. For now, though, let's bring it back to our current deep dive on reading comprehension. We've covered so much ground, from the importance of reading aloud to the power of active reading techniques, from building a rich vocabulary to nurturing a lifelong love of reading.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I think it's important to remember that reading comprehension isn't a destination. It's a journey of continuous learning and growth. There's always more to explore, new genres to discover, and deeper levels of meaning to unlock.
It really is like an ever-expanding universe.
It is. And that brings us to a thought-provoking question for you, our amazing listener. If you could instantly master just like one aspect of reading comprehension, what would it be and why? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Head over to our social media pages and share them with us.
Yeah, definitely. Let's keep this conversation going.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's maybe circle back and just distill some of the key takeaways here. We've covered a lot, and I want to make sure you walk away with some actionable strategies you can use.
I'm all about that. Actionable strategies. Give us that toolbox.
Okay, first and foremost, remember that reading should be enjoyable.
Yes.
Like whether you're reading for work, school, or just for fun, finding material that you're genuinely interested in is crucial.
It makes a huge difference.
It does. It's like the difference between forcing yourself to eat vegetables you hate and savoring a delicious meal. When you enjoy what you're reading, those comprehension skills, they just kind of fall into place.
They do. It's so much easier to understand something when you're actually interested in it.
Exactly. And don't limit yourself to just one genre or format. Embrace the diversity of reading materials out there.
Mix it up.
Yes. Fiction, nonfiction, poetry, graphic novels. There's a whole world of words waiting to be explored.
Okay, so find things you enjoy, mix it up, and remind me again, what were those active reading techniques we talked about?
Right. Those are important. So we have predicting, connecting, visualizing, and summarizing. Remember?
Oh, yeah. Those are good.
They are. They really help you become a more active and engaged reader.
And it's not just for students, right? Anyone can benefit from these techniques.
Absolutely. Whether you're a student prepping for exams, a professional tackling industry reports, or just someone who loves to learn and grow active reading, can totally take your comprehension to the next level. Oh, and we can't forget about integrating reading into our everyday lives.
Making it a habit.
Yes. Like cooking together, deciphering signs, reading instructions, all those little moments can be opportunities to practice those reading comprehension skills.
I love that. It's like sneaking in a workout without even realizing it.
Exactly. Okay, last but not least, let's not forget the importance of patience and encouragement. Learning to read and to read well takes time and effort.
It does. It's a journey.
It is. And we all progress at our own pace. The key is to celebrate those milestones along the way. Did they finish a chapter book? Tackle a challenging article? Those are all wins.
Big time. Celebrate those wins and, provide support when it's needed.
Absolutely. Positive reinforcement can make a world of difference in nurturing a lifelong love of reading. So as we wrap things up today, whether you're a parent supporting a young reader, a student striving for academic excellence, or just someone who wants to unlock the power of words, we hope this deep dive has given you the tools and inspiration to start your own reading comprehension journey.
I think it has. Reading really is a gateway to endless possibilities.
It is. It allows us to explore new worlds, connect with others, expand our knowledge, and ignite our imaginations. So keep reading, keep learning, and keep diving deep into this amazing world of words.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of the Deep Dive, but the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Of course not.
Head over to our social media pages and share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences. We want to hear from you.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those pages turning.
So you want to help a child become a better writer.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. And today we're doing a deep dive into this excerpt we've got.
Right.
That is just absolutely packed with tips on exactly how to do that.
It is.
So get ready to take some notes.
Oh, yeah. This is good stuff.
Because I think you're really going to want to remember some of this stuff.
And you know what?
Yeah.
It's not all about just acing those tests in school.
Right.
This is about helping kids build confidence, you know, finding their voice
Yeah.
and expressing themselves.
Yeah.
And actually, studies have shown that kids who can write well when they're younger actually do better in school overall later on.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's even more reason to pay attention to this.
Sure.
All right, so let's just jump right into this excerpt.
Okay.
One of the things that really jumped out at me was this idea that reading lots of different types of stuff, like comics, poetry, even just like, whatever, can actually make a kid a better writer.
It's true.
That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's because when they see all those different ways of writing, they start to like internalize it. They start to see, okay, here's how you structure a sentence.
Right.
Here's all this great vocabulary.
Yeah.
Here are all these different ways you can tell a story. And it gives them a sort of toolbox they can then use in their own writing.
So it's not even just about reading a lot. It's about reading like a variety of things.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, another thing this excerpt talks about is like just making writing a part of everyday life.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something I think we maybe don't always think about. But it mentions things like, even just writing a grocery list together.
Yeah.
Or having your kid write a thank you note to their teddy bear.
Right.
Like just making it fun and simple.
And regular.
Yeah.
As part of the routine.
Exactly. And they say that can actually really help.
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
Well, it's like anything else. The more you practice something, the easier it gets.
Right.
And the more comfortable you are with it. So, if you're constantly doing these little writing exercises, even if they're silly or playful, you just get more fluent.
Yeah.
You get more confident. And writing becomes less of a chore and more just like a natural way to communicate.
That reminds me, actually, of when I was a kid. I used to sit with my mom when she was like paying bills. She'd be writing out the checks.
Yep.
And I would just sit next to her with like my little notebook and just pretend to write important stuff too.
That's adorable.
I think that's part of why I love writing so much today.
I love that. And it's a perfect example of how kids learn.
Yeah.
They watch the adults in their lives and they imitate.
Right.
So when they see you writing, they think, okay, that's what grown-ups do.
Yeah.
That's normal. I can do that too.
Yeah.
And sometimes those little informer moments really can lead to like a lifelong love of writing.
That's really cool.
It is.
Okay, so another thing that I thought was fun that they talk about in this excerpt is bringing writing into playtime. So they mention like creating a group story where each person adds a sentence.
Oh, I love that.
And I thought that was such a fun idea.
I haven't done that in ages.
Me neither.
That would be so fun.
Yeah, I know, right? But it's a really great idea.
It is.
And they say that it can actually help with a lot of different skills.
Oh, yeah.
Without even realizing it.
Yeah. How so? So you're learning about things like plot, character development, how to build suspense, like all those things that make a story interesting.
Yeah.
But you're doing it in this fun, playful way.
Yeah.
So you're not even thinking about it as like, learning.
Well, that makes sense.
It's just fun.
Okay, one more thing I want to touch on from this part of the excerpt is about feedback.
Yes.
And how important it is to give constructive feedback.
Oh, it's so important.
I remember when I was in elementary school, I had this teacher who always used to like highlight the parts of my writing that she liked. And it made me feel so proud and it made me want to keep writing more.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it really is about finding that balance between praise and giving them helpful tips for improvement.
Right. So it's not just like, oh, good job.
Exactly.
You need to actually give them some like,
specific feedback.
Yeah.
And what's really neat is when you focus on their effort and their creativity.
Yeah.
It helps them develop what's called a growth mindset.
Okay.
Which is this belief that their skills can always improve.
Yeah.
It's not about being good or bad at writing.
Right.
It's just about always getting better.
Yeah.
And when you do offer those corrections, if you can do it in a really gentle and tactful way, it helps them improve those skills without getting discouraged.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about reading different genres, making writing a daily habit.
Yes.
Being good writing role models.
Yeah.
And even bringing writing into playtime.
Absolutely.
What else does this excerpt have in store for us?
Well, let's talk about variety.
Okay.
Because it also talks about encouraging all different types of writing.
Okay.
Not just stories and poems.
Right.
Think letters, research reports, even persuasive essays.
Oh, wow.
Exposing them to all these different styles early on can really help them.
That makes sense, but how do you get kids excited about, like, informational writing? That doesn't always sound like the most, thrilling topic.
You're right. It doesn't always.
Right.
But kids are naturally curious.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Okay.
So you just got to tap into their interests.
Like how?
So let's say a kid is obsessed with dinosaurs.
Okay.
Encourage them to do some research on their favorite dinosaur and write a report about it. Suddenly, what might have seemed like informational writing becomes this fun way to learn about something they're passionate about.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of tapping into interests, the excerpt also mentions using technology appropriately.
Yeah.
Which I know is something that a lot of parents and caregivers are
a
little wary of, like all the screen time.
Right.
But they do say that there are some really cool apps and games that can actually make writing fun and engaging for kids.
For sure.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there's the games, but there's also all these amazing digital storytelling platforms now.
Oh, yeah.
Where kids can create their own stories with text and illustrations and really bring their imaginations to life in a whole new way.
Oh, wow.
And that can be so powerful because you're using technology as a tool to make writing more fun, more engaging, and more accessible.
I love that. And, as kids get older, I think teaching them some basic typing skills can really be a game changer.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it just makes the whole writing process so much smoother.
It does.
I still remember how frustrating it was to hunt and peck.
Oh, yeah.
When I was first learning.
Me too.
So, yeah, I think that's really important.
Well, and when you think about it, typing quickly and easily really frees up your brain to focus on your ideas and the actual craft of writing. Yeah. So it's a really valuable skill.
It is.
Not just for school.
Right.
But for life.
Yeah, we live in a digital world.
We do.
Okay, so another thing this excerpt talks about is setting writing goals together.
Okay.
Which might sound a little formal, but it doesn't have to be, right? Right. It could be something as simple as we're going to try to write for 15 minutes 3 times this week.
Exactly.
Or, whatever works for you.
And then when they reach those goals, you celebrate.
Yes.
Make it a big deal.
Exactly, because I think, when you set those achievable goals and you actually track the progress, it helps build that sense of accomplishment.
It does.
And it motivates them to keep going.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really shows them that writing is a skill you can develop.
Yes.
With effort and practice.
Exactly.
Okay, one last thing I want to highlight from this section is about participating in writing activities outside of school.
Oh,
so things like writing contests or joining a book club, just really finding ways to foster that love of writing in a fun and engaging way.
For sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's great because it helps them see that writing isn't just something you do for school.
Right.
It could be this fun thing you do with other people.
Yeah.
It builds that sense of community around writing. They get to share their work. Get feedback from their peers and see that they're not alone in loving writing.
Exactly.
And that can be so powerful for a young writer.
It can.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we've covered pretty much all the strategies from this excerpt.
I think so.
And this has been so insightful. I'm already feeling inspired to try some of these ideas out.
Me too.
But before we wrap things up,
there's
one more crucial point we need to address.
Oh, yeah.
Which is this idea of fostering a genuine love of writing. Not just making it fun, but helping kids understand the power of words.
Yes.
It's something I think a lot about as someone who, loves to write.
Me too.
So how do you actually help a child see that their writing can make a difference?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
And it really gets at the heart of why we do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about more than just grammar and punctuation.
Right.
It's about giving them the power to find and share their own unique voices. And when a kid sees that their words can actually have an impact, whether it's through a story that captivates their audience, or a letter that persuades someone, or a report that shares all this well-researched information, that's when they start to see the real magic of writing.
It really is magical when you think about it.
It is.
I remember that feeling I used to get as a kid when I would finish a story and I'd share it with my family. And their encouragement just meant the world to me.
And creating that kind of environment where they feel seen and heard and their creativity is celebrated is so important.
Yeah.
Because then they start to embrace writing as a form of self-expression and a way to connect with the world around them.
Right. And think about, those early experiences you had.
Yeah.
Sharing your writing with your family.
Yeah.
That really helped shape
It did.
your love of writing.
It really did.
Yeah. So this has been such a helpful deep dive. We've explored so many practical tips and strategies to help kids become better writers.
Mm-hmm.
But it really all comes back to that bigger goal of fostering a lifelong love of writing.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to remember that every child is different.
Oh, for sure.
Some might naturally gravitate toward creative writing,
Right.
while others might find their passion in research or persuasive writing.
Exactly.
So the key is to just provide them with opportunities to explore all those different styles and celebrate their individual strengths and interests.
I love that.
So for everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
I challenge you to pick just one strategy we talked about today
Great.
and try it out this week
Yes.
with the young writer in your life.
I love it.
Whether it's reading a comic book together,
Mm-hmm.
encouraging them to write a silly poem,
Yeah.
helping them type out a story they've created, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Every small step can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
And ultimately,
Yeah.
when you help a child develop a love of writing,
You're giving them a gift that will last a lifetime.
you are.
You're empowering them to communicate effectively,
Yes.
think critically, and share their unique perspective with the world.
Exactly.
And really, what could be more amazing than that?
Seriously.
All right, that's it for part 1 of this deep dive.
Can't wait for part 2.
We'll be back soon with even more tips and insights, so stay tuned.
See ya then. So we've talked about reading different genres, making writing a daily habit, being good writing role models, and even bringing writing into playtime.
Right.
What else does this excerpt have in store for us?
Well, speaking of variety,
Okay.
the excerpt also emphasizes encouraging different types of writing,
Okay.
going beyond just stories and poems.
Right.
Think about things like letters, research reports, even persuasive essays.
Okay.
Exposing them to a range of writing styles early on can be really beneficial.
That makes sense, but how do you get kids excited about things like informational writing? Let's be honest, it doesn't always sound like the most thrilling topic.
You're right, it doesn't always.
Right.
But remember, kids are naturally curious.
Yeah.
The key is to tap into their interests.
Okay.
Like how?
How do you do that?
So let's say a child is fascinated by dinosaurs.
Okay.
Encourage them to do some research on their favorite dinosaur and write a report about it.
Right.
Suddenly, what might have seemed like informational writing
Yeah.
becomes a fun way to learn about something they're passionate about.
That's a great way to frame it.
Right.
And while we're on the topic of tapping into interests,
Yeah.
the excerpt also mentions using technology appropriately.
Yeah.
I know some people are wary of screen time, but there are some really cool apps and games out there
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
that can make writing fun and engaging for kids.
Definitely.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's not just about games.
Right.
Think about digital storytelling platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Kids can create their own stories with text and illustrations, bringing their imaginations to life in a whole new way. Using technology as a tool can enhance creativity and make writing more accessible.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
And as kids get older, teaching them basic typing skills can be a game changer.
Oh, absolutely.
It just makes the writing process so much smoother.
It does.
I still remember how frustrating it was to hunt and peck at the keyboard when I was learning.
Oh, yeah, me too.
So yeah, I think that's really important.
Well, and typing fluency can really free up mental space for kids to focus on their ideas and the craft of writing.
Right.
It's a valuable skill that will serve them well throughout their lives,
Yeah,
both academically and professionally.
it is.
We live in a digital world after all.
We do.
Yeah.
The excerpt also talks about setting writing goals together,
Okay.
which might sound a bit formal,
Right.
but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't.
Right.
No.
I mean,
It could be something as simple as aiming to write for 15 minutes 3 times a week.
exactly.
And when they reach those goals,
Yeah,
celebrate.
exactly.
Make it a big deal. Setting achievable goals and tracking progress helps build a sense of accomplishment
Yeah,
and motivates kids to keep going.
totally.
It reinforces that writing is a skill that can be developed with effort and practice. It's not about being good or bad at writing.
Right.
It's about continuous growth.
That reminds me of another point the excerpt highlighted.
Okay.
Participating in writing activities outside of school,
Oh, yeah.
like writing contests or joining a book club.
Hmm.
It's all about fostering a love of writing in a fun, engaging way.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating about those kinds of activities is that they help kids develop a sense of community around writing.
Yeah.
They get to share their work, get feedback from peers,
Right.
and see that they're not alone in their love of writing.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly empowering for a young writer to connect with others who share their passion.
It sounds like we've covered almost all of the strategies in this excerpt.
I think so.
It's been so insightful.
It has been.
I'm already feeling inspired to try some of these ideas with the young writers in my life.
Me too. And remember, you don't have to do everything at once.
Right.
Start with 1 or 2 strategies that resonate with you and the child you're working with.
Okay.
The most important thing is to be patient, encouraging, and to make the writing process enjoyable.
Yeah.
When kids see writing as a fun and meaningful way to express themselves, the possibilities are truly endless.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap things up, there's one more crucial point we need to address.
Okay, what's that?
The excerpt really emphasizes this idea of fostering a genuine love of writing. Not just making it fun, but helping kids understand the power of words.
Yes.
It's something I think a lot about as someone who, loves to write.
Yeah, me too.
So how do you actually help a child see that their writing can make a difference?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really gets at the heart of why we encourage kids to write. Yeah. It's about more than just grammar and punctuation. It's about empowering them to find and share their unique voices.
Right.
And when a child sees that their words can actually have an impact, whether it's through a story that captivates their audience, or a letter that persuades someone, or a report that shares all this well-researched information, that's when they start to see the real magic of writing.
It really is magical when you think about it.
It is.
I remember that feeling I used to get as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
When I would, finish a story and share it with my family. And, their encouragement just meant the world to me.
It makes such a difference.
It does.
Creating that kind of environment where they feel seen and heard and their creativity is celebrated is so important.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because then they start to embrace writing as a form of self-expression.
Right.
And a way to connect with the world around them.
And, thinking back to those early experiences, sharing your writing with your family, that really helped shape your love of writing.
Oh, absolutely it did.
Yeah.
It really did.
So this has been such a helpful deep dive.
It has.
We've explored so many practical tips and strategies to help kids become better writers.
Yeah, we have.
But it really all comes back to that bigger goal of fostering a lifelong love of writing.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to remember that every child is different.
Oh, for sure.
Some might naturally gravitate toward creative writing, while others might find their passion in research or persuasive writing,
Totally.
It's all different. So the key is to just provide them with opportunities to explore all those different styles.
Yes.
And celebrate their individual strengths and interests.
Absolutely.
So for everyone listening out there, I challenge you to pick just one strategy we talked about today.
Okay.
And try it out this week with the young writer in your life.
I love it.
Whether it's reading a comic book together, encouraging them to write a silly poem, helping them type out a story they've created, whatever it is, every small step can make a big difference.
It really can.
And ultimately, when you help a child develop a love of writing, you're giving them a gift that will last a lifetime.
You are.
You're empowering them to communicate effectively, think critically, and share their unique perspective with the world.
I love that.
And really, what could be more amazing than that?
Seriously.
All right, everyone. That's it for our deep dive on helping kids excel at writing.
Thanks for listening.
Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the resources we mentioned, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive. Bye.
All right. Confession time. Math.
Yeah.
Not my favorite subject growing up.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Big time. I mean, honestly, staring at those algebra problems, sometimes I felt like I was trying to crack some ancient code or something.
Right.
But hey, that's why we're diving into this whole mathematical competency thing, right?
Exactly.
To figure out how to actually make math,
Make it click.
Yeah. Make it click, make it fun, make it make sense, especially for, for kids.
Absolutely.
And even for us grown-ups who maybe still get a little
freaked out.
Yeah. A little freaked out by numbers sometimes.
Totally.
So I gotta say, digging into all these different sources we have has been
pretty interesting.
Super interesting. Yeah. And I think one of the first things that really jumped out at me was this idea of
the foundation.
Yeah. Building that strong foundation. But, and it's not just about memorizing times tables and stuff.
Right.
It's more about like really
That
understanding.
core concepts.
Yeah. Yeah. The core concepts, how it all kind of fits together. Like, how addition and subtraction relate or what a fraction actually represents.
It's like number sense, you know?
Yes. Number sense.
Yeah.
That's the word.
And building that foundation, it's like you were saying, it's not just about memorization, it's about...
It's like the building blocks.
Exactly. It's the base for everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, once you have that, then things like, algebra.
Ooh, algebra.
It becomes less about like just solving for X and more about like, I can use this to figure out,
real life stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
which deal is actually better at the grocery store,
Sure.
Figuring out that price per unit.
Okay. That is...
A practical application.
Yeah, that's a practical application I can get behind.
Yeah.
And speaking of real life stuff, I was really into this whole idea from the sources about, making math a daily habit.
Oh, yeah.
Like incorporating it into
These stuff.
everyday things, like having your kid add up the prices in the grocery cart or,
Yeah. Or even like estimate how long it'll take to get to school.
right. Based
I
on
think-
like the distance and how fast you're going.
Exactly.
It's like sneaking in a little math lesson.
I love that, sneaking it in. And the thing is, when you do that, when it's part of their daily life,
It becomes more natural.
way more natural. It's not this scary thing in a textbook anymore.
Yeah, it's not this like, abstract concept.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, this is how we use numbers in the real world.
That's the key.
Okay, so speaking of making math less scary and more fun, I was so excited to see all this stuff, the sources about...
About games.
Yes, games. I mean, math, bingo, Sudoku.
Even building with Legos.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Legos. All about like spatial reasoning and stuff.
And it's amazing because with games, it's not just about memorizing facts.
Right.
It's engaging different parts of the brain.
It's like you're learning without even realizing it.
Exactly. You're problem solving, you're strategizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Exactly. That's the best part. And that brings us to another important point from the sources. It's not just about those drills, those
Rote memorization.
rote memorization kind of things. It's about asking those
Open-ended.
open-ended questions.
Like instead of just saying, hey, what's 7 times 8? It's like, how many different ways can you get to 56 through multiplication?
I love that example.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about finding the answer.
It's about like...
It could be multiple answers.
Yes. And it's about that process.
Exactly. The process of figuring it out.
It's like you're training your brain to think flexibly.
Totally.
To like problem solve.
Problem solving, critical thinking.
And it's okay to,
make mistakes.
make mistakes along the way. That's all part of it.
Huge part of it. Actually, the sources really emphasize that.
Oh, yeah.
That it's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about seeing them as...
Opportunities.
Exactly. Opportunities to learn and grow.
It's the whole growth mindset thing.
And, when we're afraid of making mistakes...
We hold ourselves back.
We totally do. But when we see them as part of the process...
It's like, okay, I learned something from that. Now I can...
Move forward.
Yeah. And keep going.
Love it. And, speaking of moving forward, the sources had some really cool ideas about, like...
Going beyond the textbook.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beyond the traditional stuff.
Like they mentioned this book, The Grapes of Math, which sounds super fun.
I know, right?
It's like using
To
storytelling.
teach math concepts.
Yeah. And then there are all these amazing online platforms like Khan Academy.
Which is awesome because it's like...
Personalized learning.
Yes, you can go at your own pace.
Exactly.
And it's tailored to you.
And then, the sources also talked about things like math clubs.
Competitions, even.
Yeah. So it's really about like finding what works for each individual.
What clicks for them.
Yeah, because everyone learns differently.
Absolutely.
And then there's this thing that we can all do, as parents, as caregivers, as just...
Humans in the world.
Yeah. It's like modeling how DREE use math
Yeah.
in everyday life.
Oh, that's so important.
Whether we're budgeting or figuring out a tip at a restaurant.
Or like how much fabric you need for a project.
Right. Or, remember those family road trips where you'd calculate how far you had to go?
Oh, totally.
It's like those real life examples.
Going to make it so much more relatable.
Yeah. And it shows kids and it reminds
Yes,
us.
math is everywhere.
It's not just this thing in a textbook.
It's a tool we use all the time.
So we've talked about like building that strong foundation in math,
Yeah.
making it a daily habit, finding those fun ways to engage with it.
Problem solving, going beyond the textbook.
Yes. It's about
Yeah.
like changing our whole perspective on math, making it...
Less intimidating.
Yeah.
And more like a natural part of life.
Exactly.
So thinking about everything we've talked about today, all these different approaches, It really comes down to like equipping ourselves and our kids with the tools to
thrive.
To thrive in a world where, numbers are everywhere.
Numbers are everywhere.
They really are.
So as we wrap up, I'd love to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
I like this.
Yeah. What is one small step?
Just one.
You can take today to make math more engaging, more approachable for yourself or for a child in your life?
I think that's a great question to end on.
Yeah. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Let us know.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Today we're going to be talking about study skills.
Yes.
But we're not just talking about how to pass a test or anything like that.
Right.
We're talking about equipping your child for success.
In school and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some fascinating research
on how to build those strong study habits.
And the thing that really surprised me was that it starts a lot earlier than you think.
It really does.
Totally.
Yeah, the groundwork for good study habits is really laid in those early years.
Okay.
It's like building a house.
You need a solid foundation to support everything that comes after.
So where do we even begin? Let's say we have like a kindergartner.
Like where?
Well, one of the most impactful things you can do is create a dedicated study space.
Okay.
For your child.
So more than just like having a desk in their room.
Exactly.
It's about carving out a consistent learning environment.
Okay.
Think of it like their own personal learning zone.
Like that.
This space should be quiet, organized, and free from distractions. Like TVs, video games, or even a pile of tempting toys.
Right.
So when they enter that space, their brain knows it's time to focus.
Oh, so it becomes a cue.
Precisely.
It becomes a cue for their mind to shift gears.
Okay.
And you know what? It's not just about the physical space.
It's also about time.
Okay.
Having a consistent routine for homework or learning activities, even just for short periods each day, reinforces the importance of regular practice.
It's like athletes and their pregame rituals.
Exactly.
Like kids can have their pre-learning routine.
I love that. Our expert also highlights something that I think a lot of parents already do instinctively.
Which is reading.
Of course.
But they really emphasize the importance of daily reading.
Across different formats.
Yeah.
Fiction, nonfiction magazines, you name it.
You hit the nail on the head.
It's about exposing them to a variety of styles and genres.
But it's not just about quantity.
Yeah, what does quality reading look like, especially for younger kids?
It's about engaging with them about what they're reading.
Okay.
Ask questions, discuss the characters, predict what might happen next. Mm-hmm. This helps them develop critical thinking skills.
Build vocabulary, and most importantly, cultivate a love of reading.
So almost like a family book club, even with the littlest ones.
Exactly.
That's a really good idea.
But sometimes even I feel overwhelmed when things get cluttered.
I can only imagine how a child facing a mountain of schoolwork must feel.
Right.
So how do we help them with organization?
That's so important.
For a child, especially one who might be struggling with executive functioning skills.
Disorganization can feel truly paralyzing.
Yeah.
That's where teaching organizational skills becomes more than just a good habit.
It's a crucial coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Planners are a great tool even for young children.
Does it need to be anything fancy?
Not at all.
It can be as simple as a whiteboard calendar.
Okay.
Or a colorful chart where they can track assignments and deadlines. Visually breaking down tasks into smaller, more manageable steps also makes a huge difference.
So instead of saying, finish your science project,
you would suggest breaking it down.
Exactly.
Like tonight, let's focus on researching volcanoes.
Or tomorrow, we'll gather materials for our model.
Okay.
This makes it feel much less overwhelming.
And gives them a sense of accomplishment as they check things off their list.
That's really good advice.
And while we're on the topic of making things manageable, let's talk about active learning.
Okay.
I love this concept.
Our expert really emphasizes hands-on activities, note-taking, even for little ones, and educational games.
Active learning is amazing because it taps into different learning styles.
It's so much more engaging and effective than just passively listening or reading.
And when learning is fun,
right,
kids are more likely to retain information.
It makes you think of all those times we turned everyday activities into mini learning adventures.
Absolutely.
Remember building that model volcano?
Of course.
For a science project.
Yeah. Baking cookies becomes a math lesson on fractions.
Exactly.
And nature walk turns into a botany expedition.
So it's about being intentional and recognizing those everyday learning opportunities.
Yes.
I love that.
Now there's one thing that struck me as particularly important.
Okay.
And that is the idea that parents can play a huge role simply by modeling
Absolutely.
good study habits themselves.
Children are incredibly observant. They learn so much by watching us.
When we show enthusiasm for learning and prioritize it in our own lives, it sends a powerful message.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
I remember when my dad used to sit down with a book every evening after dinner.
And it showed me that reading wasn't just for school.
It was something adults enjoyed too.
That's a perfect example.
Creating a quiet time in your household where everyone engages in a learning activity.
Okay.
Reading puzzles, even online courses, can be incredibly impactful.
And it doesn't have to be a formal thing,
Right.
just a shared commitment to learning together.
Yeah.
It's about creating a culture of learning in your home.
That's a wonderful way to put it.
And you know what? Modeling good habits extends to time management as well.
We all struggle with it, even as adults.
Yeah.
But teaching kids how to manage their time effectively.
Is a gift that will serve them well throughout their lives.
So where do we even start? Like, are we talking like elaborate color-coded schedules?
Not necessarily.
Even something as simple as using a timer
Okay.
can be a game changer.
Especially for younger children,
Mm-hmm.
it helps them focus on those short bursts of effort followed by breaks.
Kind of like interval training for the brain.
Yes, exactly.
Think sprints, not marathons.
Okay.
Short bursts of focus effort are much more effective than trying to cram everything in at once.
We're right.
And alongside that, help them set achievable goals
Okay.
for their study sessions.
So instead of saying, finish all your math homework.
It's more like, let's tackle 5 problems, then take a 5-minute break.
Precisely.
It makes the task feel less daunting and sets them up for success.
And this ties into another crucial skill.
The ability to ask for help when they need it.
Absolutely.
And that's a skill that goes far beyond academics.
Right.
It's about knowing when to reach out for support in any area of life.
That's a really good point.
Now let's kind of shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about making learning relevant to their lives outside of school.
Oh, there are so many opportunities to make those connections.
Like what?
Think about it. Baking cookies.
Okay.
That's a perfect time to practice fractions.
Yeah.
Going for a nature walk.
Observe the different types of plants and animals. That's science in action.
Love it.
It's like sneaking in those vegetables they think they don't like.
Right.
And speaking of fostering a love of learning,
Our expert emphasized the importance of cultivating a growth mindset.
a growth mindset is about praising effort and encouraging perseverance.
Okay.
It's about helping children see mistakes as learning opportunities.
Not as failures.
So instead of saying, you got an A, you're so smart.
We should say, wow, look at how your hard work paid off.
Exactly.
It's about focusing on the process, not just the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
This is essential for building resilience.
When children have a growth mindset, they're more likely to embrace challenges
Okay.
and see setbacks as stepping stones to success.
This makes me think about test taking.
Tests can be stressful.
Oh,
Anyway.
absolutely.
Our expert mentioned that we can equip children
Yes.
with test-taking skills early on,
Absolutely.
and it doesn't have to be anything formal.
Okay.
Simple things like memory games or practice quizzes can help build those skills in a fun and engaging way.
What about dealing with those pre-test jitters?
Teaching relaxation techniques like deep breathing or mindfulness exercises can be a huge help.
Okay.
Even a few minutes of quiet time before a test can make a world of difference.
By equipping children with these strategies early on, we can help them approach tests with confidence, not fear.
It's all about building that inner toolkit,
It is.
giving them the resources to manage the ups and downs of learning. But we can't forget the crucial role of parental support.
Oh, absolutely.
Our expert mentioned fostering a positive.
And supportive learning environment at home.
It's absolutely critical.
When children feel encouraged and empowered, their potential is limitless.
So true.
Remember, your role isn't to be a perfect teacher.
But to be their biggest cheerleader.
Celebrate their successes.
Provide a safe space for them to make mistakes. And most importantly, keep that spark of curiosity alive.
That's such an important reminder.
It's not about pressure or perfection.
It's about nurturing that love of learning.
Exactly. And, as we wrap up our deep dive into study skills,
I think the biggest takeaway is this.
the most valuable skills we can give our children aren't always the ones they learn from textbooks.
It's about equipping them with those essential life skills like resilience, problem solving, critical thinking, and a genuine love of learning.
These are the skills that will truly empower them to succeed in school, in their careers, and in life.
It's like we've been focusing on giving them the right tools for their toolbox,
It's not just filling their heads with facts.
And just like any good craftsman, they need to know how to use those tools effectively.
I love that analogy.
It really brings it all together.
So to recap, we've covered so much ground today.
From creating that dedicated learning space and fostering a growth mindset, to the power of modeling good habits and encouraging a love of reading.
It's clear that simple strategies consistently applied
Can have a profound impact on a child's academic journey and their lifelong love of learning.
And remember, the most important thing is to foster that positive and supportive learning environment at home.
When children feel encouraged and empowered, their potential truly is limitless.
Beautifully put. And listeners, we want to hear from you.
What resonated with you the most from today's deep dive?
What are your favorite tips for supporting young learners?
Share your thoughts and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, happy learning.